So I will start also with one sentence about Algorithm Watch, although I think Matthias just introduced this. That's not the first slide, by the way. Can we go to the first slide? So we are an advocacy organization, which means that we are trying to lobby for better regulation, better governance of automated decision-making systems is the term that we usually use, you know, because we think AI is not an ideal framing, but I think most of you know the problems with that. But here, of course, I'm going to speak about the AI Transparency Register because, you know, if you talk about automated decision-making transparency registers, no one will listen to you. So this will be a talk in what I call applied ethics. That's where the title also comes from, Algorithms and Ethics in Public Service. Applied ethics, meaning that we have to make ethical decisions about how we want to use these systems, what we would like to allow, what we would like to prohibit. And our contribution to that is not just lobbying for better regulation, for example, in the AI Act that is negotiated at the moment, as everyone here knows, but also making suggestions of what to do in practice, and that is the AI Transparency Register for public administration. So where do we stand at the moment? I talked to the organizers before, and they told me that surprisingly to me, you seem to be in a pretty similar situation in the Czech Republic as we are in Germany. Digitization of public administration is a little behind, you know. So we would like to see more of that, but at the same time, we need to understand that there are risks with that. So authorities increasingly want to automate procedures to improve their services, right? I mean, more digitization nowadays usually is supposed to mean better services for the people who are affected by them. To improve their own procedures, it gives an opportunity to think about procedures that are probably 100 years old and design them from scratch, new and better than they were before, because again, you know, if you digitize a flawed procedure, you'll get a flawed digital procedure. So that's not going to work very well. We have an opportunity here. And to make better use of resources, of course, because, you know, it can increase efficiency. At the same time, you know, what is keeping us is this is a very complex task. It's not easy. You all know this. You are dealing with this in your everyday life. Skills and resources are lacking because there are too few people who have expertise in digitization, especially in the public sector, and it comes with risks. You have read about the different examples of where these risks actually materialized and didn't remain theoretical. We had the robo-debt scandal in Australia a while ago already. It must have been 7 years ago or something, where there was a failure in an automated system that caused a $1.8 billion Australian dollar error in the system, and also at the same time it meant that there were thousands of people who really were in bad situations because the state asked for repayment of transfer money that they didn't have. And that was this was also the problem, or a similar problem occurred in the UK, where there was a flawed IT process in the postal system, and people were accused of defrauding the system who never did anything wrong in their life, and it took 10 years to clarify this, and a parliamentary inquiry commission to set the record straight. And again, many people were directly affected, and they were severely affected. They lost their jobs, they lost their credibility in their communities. It was horrific. And the last thing that is very recent, about 2 years ago, that the government in the Netherlands resigned after the benefit scandal, where again, you know, there were thousands of repayment requests sent out, and many of them were wrong. You know, people who had received 3,000 euros that they were supposed to pay back got a repayment request for 30,000 euros. So what are the goals then that we are looking for or looking at? We want to improve the services, yes. But at the same time, we want to protect the people's rights, we want to increase the common good, and we want to retain the trust of the people in the public administration. And question is, how can we do that? We need to build capacity. We need to offer support to the public servants. We need to increase their agency, meaning that they should be able to do more things themselves on a higher level of quality. We want to improve transparency vis-à-vis the public sector also, not just the people affected, but also for the people affected. And we want to strengthen accountability, so we always know who is responsible for what. This is something that you all know, I suppose, and the question, of course, is how do we do that? And our suggestion is with a transparency register. And the first question you may ask is, why a transparency register, you know, to attain those goals? And this is what I'll try to explain you. Because, first of all, it would offer an overview of existing systems. This is something, when we talk to public sector people, public servants in Germany, they say this is a huge advantage, or would be a huge advantage, because we don't know what someone else is doing. Germany is a bigger country, but still, I suppose, and I was also told that there is this idea here as well. If you would know what people were developing in other public sector entities, it would be a huge advantage because you could reuse that. And if you already know that there was maybe an impact assessment being done, you could save a lot of work. So you can learn from one another, you can avoid making the same mistake twice, and you can save effort, which is really important because we are all lacking resources. We can enhance the quality of development because these procedural guidelines serve as a tool for quality management. The idea is that you have an assessment tool that is basically a questionnaire. I'll come to the way it works in a second. But it's basically a questionnaire and ask questions, and these questions need to be answered. And if they are answered in the development and the deployment of the system, you can avoid mistakes that otherwise would materialize, and in the end, it doesn't even have to be a scandal like the ones that I showed you. It's bad enough, you know, if it's not really working, if people are complaining on an individual basis, you have to put a lot of work into that to rectify that. So hopefully these procedural guidelines would help you with that. I mean, it's quality management in a sense. You're already doing that, but you can also do it for artificial intelligence systems. They're not magical. You have an exchange with others about these developments and ideas that you come up with, and that can also help because, you know, people would tell you, oh, we've tried that and maybe we have a good idea to make this process better. And you have an opportunity to create support structures. What does that mean? Again, I'll come to this in a second. To the people who are affected by the systems, you increase transparency and accountability. Why? Because sunlight is the best disinfectant. You know, if you need to be transparent about what you are doing, then you think twice about maybe, you know, cutting a corner or something like that. And it helps also to create this structure where you can exchange with other people and also harness their ideas. That is the flaw in the slides that I wanted to correct that, but it wasn't possible. So how would we do that? As easy as possible, as effective as necessary, right? That's always what we try to achieve. And how would a transparency register help with that? Because it is based on an impact assessment. Oh, another impact assessment. You already know about the data protection impact assessments, you know, and everyone is probably dreading them. But yes, we suggest another impact assessment. We hope it would be an easier one. How does it work? The first part of it we call the ADM triage. You know, we'll probably rename that to the AI triage. That is also more relatable, but ADM stands for automated decision-making systems, right? That's at the heart of these systems that we have in focus, because if they make decisions that really affect people in any relevant sense, then they are in our focus. Otherwise, you know, if you use AI for weather reports, doesn't matter. So we have that ADM triage, and that works in a way that you have a couple of questions in a short questionnaire. And I picked two of these questions for you to better understand this and not make it so theoretical. Can individuals avoid the decision or demand that the decision is taken via a different procedure, not involving the same technical system? So is there a choice for people, or is there no choice? Will they be undergoing that system anyhow? Now, if that is the case, you know, if they can avoid the decision, you will have one risk signal less. And it's not about a score here. It is like when you answer questions in a way that would facilitate, or that would mean that there needs to be more knowledge for the people who are affected by the system, then you need to answer the second part of the questionnaire. I'll come to that in a second. Another question is, for example, again, is the harm of the wrong decision fully reversible? You know, and here, if the question is yes, again, no risk signal. If it is no, then there is a risk signal. And what does that mean? If we do not see these risk signals in this first part of the impact assessment, which is, we argue, really simple, you know. I showed you two of these questions. They should be easy to answer, right? If we do not see any risk signals in that ADM triage, you can go and deploy the system. Because then there's no reason for more transparency and more information about this. And we designed this in the, because we think you have enough red tape in your daily work and life. If we have something like, okay, so Word now as a word processing system includes AI because the spell check or the translation functionality is now AI-based, and we use AI as a framework, it would mean that you would have to look at Word now, you know, to do a risk assessment of that. That's ridiculous. You don't need to do this, because what is being done with AI here does not affect the decision that is taken that is relevant for people. So this is why we designed this two-step system with the ADM triage at the beginning. And if you don't see risk systems, then you can deploy. Now, what happens if you see risk systems? Then you go to the second part of the impact assessment. It's another checklist. It's a little longer and it's a little harder to answer. Again, I will give you two examples. What protocols are in place to deal with system errors and malfunction? Now, this is an open question. It's not a checkbox. It's not yes or no. Why? Because it must not be a box-ticking exercise, as you know, some people call these auditing procedures, where you just have like a long list of questions and you can always say yes, no, or doesn't apply or something like this, and then no one really cares about it. No, you have to really interact with that, and you have to list in that case, for example, the protocols that are in place to deal with system errors and malfunction. And you know, from the outset, it is your decision in what detail you do that. It can become a matter of discussion later on if, for example, someone says this is not sufficient, the information you supply. Another question is, what methodologies have been used to define and measure the bias and fairness of the system? Again, you know, that is already a little more complex question, and you probably need help with that. You probably need to discuss this with the people who developed this part of the system or who you bought it from. But that's the idea, you know. If you just buy something from Microsoft, SAP, IBM, whoever, and they say, well, none of your business, this is our trade secret, you know, not good enough. And this is not about disclosing trade secrets. They will be able to tell you what measures they took, right? It's not about seeing the code. It's not about testing the data set. It's about an explanation. And when that is done, then there is a transparency report that is published. You can deploy the system, and the transparency report is published in the register. And that is then the information that is in the register. Because the question, of course, always is, what information do we need to put in the register? It is the answers to the impact assessment that are published in the register. Now, is that simple enough to protect our rights, to strengthen the expertise of the administration, enable innovation and provide better services to all of us? You know, that would be wonderful, right? Of course we know that this is not like, okay, so we start with the impact assessment and we build the AI transparency register and then everything is solved. It is a process. But we argue there are a lot of opportunities that come with that process. But there are, of course, open questions, and those would also be the ones that I would like to discuss with you, because I would like to understand, first of all, how you see the system. Is that something that you think could work for you? Does it really offer any advantages? Or is it just more creative bureaucracy, you know, in your daily lives that you would rather do without? So the open questions at the moment are, who supports the authorities? Again, I'm drawing from Germany because that is the situation that I know much better, and then you tell me whether it's similar to what is happening here. Many public servants say, but we don't have the people who can do this. And we are really trying to digitize our processes, and it's really hard enough at the moment, and now you're asking something else. So how are we going to do this? And we envision a support structure for that, that you can either call a task force or you can have an institute or something like that. It doesn't really matter. It would be the question of what fits your purposes. But you would have to have someone who can help with doing these impact assessments. If the expertise in the different parts of the administration is high enough already that you don't need this external expertise, you can do it yourself. It can be a self-assessment. It's not in the sense, it's not meant in the sense that there is a supervisory authority that would do this. This is being done with the help of peers or with the help of someone who consults you on that or with a task force, whatever it is. Who supervises the implementation? That's the next unanswered question at the moment, because, as I just said, this is a self-assessment. No? It's not like there is this one new public authority, maybe like the Data Protection Authority, that comes in and checks this, but it's a self-assessment that is being done. And when it's done, you know, you have the publication in the Transparency Register, and that's that. And then, you know, maybe on a case-by-case basis, maybe if there is a problem with a system, or maybe, you know, if the supervisory authority says, we'll just randomly pick 2 or 3 systems per year and have a look whether the self-assessment has been done thoroughly and correctly, then the supervisory authority comes into this and looks at the implementation and whether it's done in a correct way. And the last one, of course, is where do we find the people who can do the job? That's first of all the ones who are digitizing the services, and then secondly, you know, in addition to that, it's who is going to do the consulting and who is going to do the supervising of the implementation. And here, at least I would like to offer the thought that yes, you can always argue we don't have enough people at the moment. We don't have the resources, and we are really having problems with getting the work done that we would like to do. It's true, we know that. But we would argue that there is a chance to make the entire thing more efficient, in the sense that I showed before, that we would hope that there is less work done twice, and the work itself is done more efficiently, and hopefully also with a lot less mistakes. So in the end, you would save some work in the broader picture. Is that going to work? I'd say we would have to try. Thank you very much. That's our proposal, and I would be happy if you have questions and would want to discuss these with me.